Welcome everyone to day 7 of the 10-day gathering at Todos Santos 2019. Today is December 7th, 2019. We've been having a great time doing this, not just the meetings themselves, but the evenings afterward feel so interesting and fertile. It's a pleasure to be among that company. We'll be doing that again tonight at La Casita restaurant here in Todos Santos. I received a question by email, so I think I'll start with that. Hi, Robert. Thank you for your honesty in the sharings. I really enjoy watching and reading. My question for you now is this. If you dismiss the knowledge of ancient civilizations for not being scientific, how do you explain the pyramids and other things that were done in Egypt thousands of years ago and we cannot do today because we don't have the science and the technology to replicate them? To me, that seems to mean that probably they knew something that we as a society don't know now. Western science is very new and keeps changing its opinion every few years about a lot of things. My point is that it is quite naive to rely entirely on Western modern science and dismiss entirely the knowledge of a lot of old civilizations from all around the planet that when we put them together all say the same thing, E equals mc squared, in different ways, as I see it. Okay. That question is ignorant from beginning to end, and it's what John Troy calls learned ignorance. And the ignorance that was learned here is the false idea that ancient civilizations had secrets that we do not have today, that we know nothing about. That's really silly. It's foolish. They lived in different times. They had ways of dealing with the material world that is unnecessary for us today. So maybe the Egyptians knew how to roll a heavy stone 500 miles from the quarry to the site of the pyramids. However they did that, there are ways that it has been duplicated nowadays just to test, for example, rolling them on trees, using them as rollers. But that's not really the point. The point is that the secret of Egyptian civilization is how they did it, not if modern science can replicate that. Modern science and technology can replicate it in a minute and kick its ass all over the lot. You want to move a 2.5-ton stone 500 miles? You need some hydraulics to put the stone in the back of a truck and a guy to drive the truck 500 miles. That's a one-day job. You want to build a pyramid that's not just a bunch of stones piled on top of one another with a tiny couple of rooms in the center. And that's a pretty easy project. It's not easy to move the stones, but it's not that hard to fit them together in a pyramid. It's a very natural shape. It's almost like a pile of rocks. I'm sure you've seen a pile of rocks. It's almost a pyramid. Nowadays, there's a glass pyramid in Las Vegas. That's a hotel. It's just made of steel and glass. So that's the first aspect, that the idea that modern technology cannot replicate the technology of the ancients is just foolish on the face of it. We have powers today that those people knew nothing about, and we lack no powers that they had. That's the first part. But the second part is even more ignorant. He says, isn't it naive to depend upon modern science because it changes every few years? So how can you trust that? Well, that's why you can trust it, because ideas are constantly being tested. And if one falls short and there's a better idea, it's adopted. It's what doesn't change that can't be trusted. It's when something is just believed because it's a tradition or it's written down in a scripture or whatever, and then that that can't change. To any system that has the idea of heresy is an idiot system for idiots. There's no heresy. We just see what is, and we talk about it. If that goes against someone's beliefs, tough shit. Let's not put too fine a point on it. So this is an outrageous question. I know he didn't mean it that way. He praised me for having the meeting and all that, and I understand that. But snap out of it. This is, guy's in a hypnotic trance. He actually believes that the Egyptians had special secrets that we moderns lack. No, they didn't. And the religion of 2,000 years ago that the Jews cooked up in their subsistence, desert existence, there's nothing special there either. There's some morality in the Torah, first 5 books of the Bible, that make sense. There's some reasonable stuff. 2 or 3 of the 10 Commandments are pretty good. The rest is nonsense. Total nonsense. Have no gods before me, really? What am I, a slave? I can't work this out for myself? This is silly. And this is what I'm trying to bring to these conversations. Not just here in this meeting, because here I feel like I'm preaching to the choir most of the time, and I am. But there's a whole world of ignorance that's called spirituality, and it really has people in its grip. And the people who had their own wake-up call from encountering my work have told me these complex stories about their seeking that went on for years and years. And then they come across something pretty simple that I have to say, and suddenly all that delusion goes away. And one realizes, this is all I have, this moment. It may be hard, it may be easy. Usually that alternates. But in any case, hard or easy, it's all I got. It's really all I have. There isn't anything else. And this future that's promised by all the spiritual teachers, they are in a hypnotic trance, or else they're just so knavish and self-seeking that they use your belief just to feather their nest. And there are some like that, but not most of them. Most of them sincerely believe that they are enlightened and that they have the power to transmit that to you because they believe that their teacher transmitted it to them. And they're certainly not going to give up that belief, because if their teacher didn't transmit it to them, then they don't have anything. So when they wake up in the morning after a night's sleep and first come to consciousness, they have to then remind themselves who they are. Well, I'm a spiritual teacher, I'm enlightened. So you have to start out that way in order to play that role. Now, I'm sitting here in front of a room giving a speech, kind of, but I don't reconstitute myself every morning as some kind of authority. Quite the opposite. When I go out for a walk in the morning, I see what a beautiful world this is and how little I really understand of it or myself. Myself is a mystery to me. Myself is a mystery to me. And I would never sit here telling you what your myself is. That would be an outrage. And yet that's what these people are getting away with. You're not your thoughts. That's just garbage. What you really are is, and then they give you a paragraph on that. And the idea is that if you come to believe in that sincerely enough, or do whatever practice they prescribe in order to attain that, if you really do that later, after you've deserved it, you can be here. It's a form of theft, as John was saying yesterday. They're stealing what you really are and selling it back to you, because all you really are is these words of mine that are in your mind right now and your reaction to them. That's what's arising here. Someone is speaking, or I should say speaking is happening. That's much more accurate. And listening is happening, including I'm listening to my own words because I don't know where they come from and I don't know what I'll say next. And so some people find me very strange because I'll say anything. I'm not there's no filter. There is no filter. Please believe me, I can't stop what's coming out of my mouth. I really can't. I'm not saying that I couldn't shrink the whole thing down to a social formality and cope on that level. You know, I have the same training that we all have, how to be a nice boy or a nice girl and fit in and all that. Yeah, I can lapse into that. But if I do, to me, that feels like a contraction and a loss of freedom. I will do that if I need to get by. I mean, got to get by. But in a situation like this, it could be anything. I could say anything next, and I do. So this kind of thing, where there's a belief in some nonsense and a diminishment of technology and science, is just learned ignorance. We're all functioning on technology. If you need a walking stick to walk around, you don't just throw it away because someone tells you the ancient Egyptians knew how to do it without electricity and look how cool it was for them. No, it wasn't. They lived about 25 years. There was no medical care. If your teeth went bad, they rotted in your mouth and that's what killed you. Come on. And their ideas are not really very good either if you check them out. They had all these gods and superstitions and human sacrifice. To glorify that is learned ignorance. We're at the pinnacle now because the human race keeps learning and evolving. This is as good as it gets. Now, I know that's kind of hard to accept because we humans are making a mess of the place here. So I'm not saying this is some ideal situation, that's not my point, but it's the only situation we have. And if I need medical care, I want to go to someone who's trained in it, not some healer who will wave feathers over me and blow smoke and everything. That's not it. It's just not it. Okay, that was a pretty good speech. I'm just getting warmed up. No, this is a funny thing. Let me go into that for a minute before I go to your question, Joan, which arose yesterday, but I never got to hear it. That's what I mean by I'll say anything next. A few minutes ago, John and I were just chatting and I was on the social level, but I don't feel that I'm on the social level now. Not at all. I feel that something valuable is being expressed and I'm the mouthpiece for it. And that's all it is. It's nothing to do with me as an ordinary person in the room with you all. We've been socializing. Everybody sees my foibles by now, I'm sure. So it's not about that. It really isn't. But there are very few people right now who are willing to voice these ideas that I'm voicing. Very few. Because there's no profit in it, for one thing. You can't make a living doing what I'm doing. I would have to start lying and telling you, yes, okay, but I do actually have this method for awakening. And so I can't get into it. This is a big retreat, but I'm going to have a small retreat for just 5 people next week, and you can come to that. But bring your checkbook. And we're not doing that here, and that's what I'm trying to emphasize. When I began doing this on the urging of a couple of people, John was one of them, I asked myself in a very deep way, on what basis can I do that? And I knew that question because I'd practiced psychotherapy for years, and I would have to ask myself often, am I doing a good job? am I really meeting the need here? I'm talking about as a shrink, as a psychoanalyst. Am I really addressing this, or is this just a profession and I'm practicing? That's not good enough. Just practicing a profession isn't good enough. You have to be dedicated to it. You have to have a reason that you're doing it, and you have to know what the reason feels like, so that it's a sacred thing. Carl Jung, great psychoanalyst, in his writing said that when he was about to welcome a new patient into his consultorio, as he put his hand on the door to open to the knock, he would say to himself, I know absolutely nothing about this person. Nothing. So he was saying, yes, I have these ideas and all that, but I have to put that aside now and just meet this person on a human level. This is urgent. So I said, well, how can I both make a claim to be awake, and now I'm going to express that, the phenomenology of an awakened view, which I believe I can do, but how can I do that in a human way, in a way that doesn't put me above everyone else? Because I'm not comfortable with that feeling, and it doesn't work. My heart needs to be open, not superior. It isn't superior. It's just the human heart. So how can I do this? I can do it by total honesty. That's the only way I know to do this. Like right now, I'm confessing a certain no, the word escapes me. Almost a romantic, romantic isn't the right word, but it's a kind of romanticism that I feel about this life. Yes, it has value. Yes, there's real value in honesty. See, that's really a romantic idea in a way, because maybe there isn't. Maybe we just all have to do whatever the fuck we do and die. I'm not entirely sure that anything I say is going to change that for anybody. I really don't know that. That remains to be seen. So, with that critique, see, I don't know, when I say I don't know what I'll say next, I have no plans to talk that way. I don't know what that's about. Later I'll find out if maybe it's an apology of a kind. I don't know, but I've just said it. So, Joan, you had a question yesterday. We kept putting it off and never got to it.
Sure. Yesterday, Jim asked you, after 50 years of marriage, to explain to me, or share your thoughts is a better way to put that, about why I did not choose him as my husband. About
why you would choose?
Why I did not, or why I chose him.
Why you chose him?
Yes.
What were your, so you've been married for 50 years?
Yes, we have.
Mazel tov.
Thank you. Thank you. So so you began to share your thoughts, and I really appreciated those thoughts. I really did. I still feel like I influenced that decision. But I was thinking, Robert, that maybe what would help me is if you would share how you went from being awakened and deciding not to talk about it, and then maybe deciding's the wrong word, opting to talk about it.
So how I went from silent awake to
yes.
Braggadocio
yes.
awake?
Thank you. Something like that, yes.
Two people I really trust and loved both told me that it was a calling and that I was resisting it because I was embarrassed and afraid to take the bit, basically. It's pretty simple. And if people you trust start to tell you that, maybe you have to try it out. So I did try it out, but I tried it out in a way that didn't work for me. So I stopped that way and got on to this way. The way that didn't work for me was like a reiteration of my psychotherapy career, where one person typically, but sometimes two people would come and sit with me, and I'd be the authority kind of and advise them on what steps to take next to awaken. And I saw after a short time that there was what John was calling bullshit in that kind of transaction. Not that I was lying intentionally, I wasn't. And I wasn't doing it to get money out of anyone. That's what I was, so the intention was clear, but the method was bad, because I don't know what you have to do to awaken. I don't have the foggiest idea. You have a life, you're an experienced person, you have all of these, your childhood experiences, your adult experiences, 50 years of marriage. If you are not awake at that point, I don't know what to say. So on the choosing thing, okay, yes, I also have the power to choose, but only by reducing my sphere of influence to a very small, yes, but there's a wave. Well, 13.5 billion years ago, the universe was a tiny dot, yes? And that exploded, the Big Bang. But it's hard for non-scientific types, even scientific types can't really visualize this. This happened in such a brief time that it's unimaginable. I think it happened in 10, followed by a Google of zeros. That fraction of a second. Wow. An infinitesimal, unimaginable fraction of a second. This thing is now big and expanding outward. It's an explosion, and it's moving outward at high velocity. And it's still going on. And all of us are part of that explosion. This is really happening. Life is part of that explosion. How it got started, nobody knows. I doubt that some potentate waved a wand. I really doubt that. And he doesn't like you to do things naked either. He has rules. I don't think so. So it really depends. So I have no control over that explosion. I didn't make it, and I'm one of the fragments of that explosion. So there I'm powerless. I'm also powerless to digest my food, grow my hair, beat my heart, think anything intentionally. If you have the intention to have a thought, where did the intention come from? You don't know. Or if you do know, where did the intention to have that intention come from? And you see, it's turtles all the way down. So if we're on a large enough scale, and it doesn't have to be that big, there's no free will. If we want to really shrink it down, yes, there's free will. I've been trained in a certain profession, and I'm pretty good at it. So if somebody needs psychotherapy, I could stop saying the next thing that comes into my mind and serve as a function and get away with it. But it will be a strain on me, which is why I was happy to retire. Not that I don't like to help people, I do, but I didn't want to be constrained like that anymore. I just want to speak my mind 24 hours a day. And I've lost friends, but I've also gained a lot of them. And my wife, Katanya, you've met, has stuck with me through all the ups and downs of a wild man's unfoldment. So I'm golden. I don't mind taking a risk. I don't mind being embarrassed. I don't mind being foolish. I often am foolish. I don't mind fucking up. I've fucked up plenty. My fuck-ups are legion. I can't even keep track of them. So on that level as a fuck-up, I have no free will. Yeah. Yes.
Were you ever a seeker yourself?
Not in the way that I see people seeking, that I would call a seeker, but of course, we all must seek until we get a footing that we feel we can live with. But no, I never sat at anyone's feet. I had a mentor, but he didn't require my adoration. In fact, he would have been repulsed by it, thank God. And I didn't really have it to offer. Anyway, so no, I wasn't that kind of seeker. In fact, John mentioned Ramana Maharshi's talks yesterday, and I haven't read that book. And I realized that probably most of the people in this room have read that book, or at least know what it said. I don't. When someone asked me questions about Ramana Maharshi, I went to, I don't like to do a lot of spiritual reading anymore, so what I did is go to his page of quotes on the internet. And I just read through the page of quotes and got the plot. And I liked a lot of it, but not all. And that's why I can see him as a person. There's a very good person. There's a lot of things he said that are highly valuable, but there's some things there that I wouldn't want to. Well, anyway, okay, so after a couple of years, I quit. And I had met John while I was in my last throes of that sit in the chair, being the wise man act. And John had this Facebook. I had never been on Facebook. This is like 2010. I didn't even know what Facebook was. Yeah, I'd heard of it, but no interest. John had a Facebook group called Conversations with Avant-Garde Sages. And there were a lot of sages on this group. It was a big group. John asked me to help him admin it. So, okay. So now I have the power in the group to moderate these conversations. And I began to employ that power because people, most of the conversations didn't sound very sage to me at all. What they were is quotes from spiritual teachers mostly, where this is held up as evidence. See, it's just like any other Facebook group. There's a low-level aggression going on. There's a debate, and it's a one-upsmanship debate. I don't like one-upsmanship debate. I hate it. I really do. It feels very uncomfortable to me, and everybody ends up sad. And I don't like that. I do like dialectic. Dialectic is a beautiful word. It's debate without the emotions. So the idea there is state your case, and the other person's trying to understand the case. They are trying to make a better argument than you can for it. That's, even though it's the opposite of what they really think. They want to make sure that they understand what you're saying, not defeat you. And then if they still feel the way that they feel, beautiful. Their understanding has been illuminated and strengthened. So that's what thank you, Joan. So this is what we should be doing. We should be engaged with our fellow humans in dialectic, not trying to kill them. Okay, so this is very important. And this is what we see in American politics today that's so disappointing. There used to be an element of dialectic in that, and it's now missing almost entirely. Almost entirely. Now you've got one team over here with the red jerseys and the other team over here with the blue jerseys. Strap on the helmet and just get out there and kill. Mm-hmm. And that, even if you have to violate your own inner life, your emotional life, if you're a politician anymore, you can't really afford that. You've got to leave that at home with the wife and kids or the husband and kids and go out to do battle, and then they're sad. So of course what they express is sad. And that's okay. You have a question? You have a question, Jim, sorry.
About the politicians. Joan and I were actually talking about that this morning. You know, we have 380 million people in the United States, and a person that said that they didn't believe in God could not get elected to high offices.
Obviously.
But we still have, if in a survey or whatever, 25% will check the box no affiliation or no particular religious beliefs or
Yeah, but
affiliation.
25% isn't enough, because out of that 25, well, the problem with people who are not religious believers is a lot of them wouldn't really be organized into some power group, but a church does that instantly. The Mormon Church just tells all of its people how to vote, and they mostly do, 98% of them or whatever it is. Same thing with the Catholic Church. There's the Catholic line. They don't get as much compliance because they're on the wrong side of family planning, which is an abomination in the sight of the Lord. But they still get pretty heavy compliance. And so that's how Trump got elected, you know. He promised to be on the wrong side of family planning, and he has complied. And a lot of his voters dislike him, hate the idea that he said he can just grab any pussy he wants, which is a seriously violent statement. It's rape. So that to just say I can rape if I want to, and I can get away with it because I'm a celebrity. That's a shocking statement. And then he gets elected. He got elected because he promised to change the family planning laws in the U.S. That's how he got elected. So if you, I'm not even an atheist, so it's pretty hard to organize me. I'm just an I don't knowist and a beist. I don't like to think about these matters because there's no answer to them. Anything that I would think about God or not God is just speculation. I can't prove either proposition. And so I won't, I have a really good mental discipline. If there's no conceivable way for me to get real information about a question, I lose interest in the question immediately. It's just off my list. I don't even want to hear your speculations on it, much less do I want to speculate on it. No interest. So whether there's a God or not means nothing to me. Nothing. I don't care. There's no answer to that question. Whether there's life after death, I have no information on the subject. If you're one of my readers, but I'm saying this also for this film we're making, but if you're one of my readers, I've told the story of this king in northern China, and he hears that there is a wise Zen master in his kingdom, the wisest Zen master in the world. So he sends his soldiers down south to seek this man out. And it takes a really long time. Travel's slow in those days, and then they have to go from house to house. Finally, they arrive at the house of this very old man, and they say, "You've been summoned to the emperor's palace." So he doesn't say anything, just bows. And they say, "Come with us." They put him on horseback, and they're traveling back up this way, and it takes weeks. And during that time, whenever they take a break, they offer him tea, but he doesn't say a word, he just bows. So finally, after all this transport, he's in the central country, and he's taken before the great potentate. And the emperor says to him from on high, "They say you're a very wise Zen master." Man hasn't spoken for weeks, and he just continues his silence, he bows. And the emperor says, "If you're the wisest man in my realm, answer me a question. What happens when you die?" The old man does not speak, he just bows. And the emperor starts to lose his temper, and he glares at him, and he says in a very angry voice, "Why do you refuse to tell me the answer to my question? What happens when you die?" And finally, after these weeks, the Zen master breaks his silence, and he says, "O great one, I cannot answer your question. I may be a wise Zen master, but I'm not a dead Zen master. Now that pretty much says all that anyone would really need to know about these questions of God and the afterlife and all the rest of it. And you knows that how, Charlie? My uncle used to say, you knows that how, Charlie? Mm-hmm. So that's what I say to all these gurus. It's simple. But I doubt that one of them would want to really have dialogue with me, dialectic. See, a dialogue is what John and I were having yesterday and we're all having now. This is dialectic. Nobody's trying to kill me. And I remain silent most of the time nowadays. The people of Todos Santos think of me as a very quiet man. If you would ask them, what's Robert like? Oh, he's pretty quiet. He's this kind of thin guy who walks around with his camera, doesn't say much. I do it here because you're safe. It's okay here to speak this way. It's okay for me to say I'm awake. You know, fine, okay, but when I'm just in the street, I won't talk this way. There's no reason. Nobody wants to hear it and they wouldn't understand it anyway, and it might come off being misunderstood in a really bad way. And so it's best to just keep it to yourself. That's what I say. Don't preach. If you have an awakening or a new deeper insight, keep it to yourself for a while, I say. Don't try to convince anyone else, because if you can't, you might start losing that energy. And probably you want to convince them just to prove it to yourself at first, and that's not really the right motive. So I was silent for about 20 years. And during that 20 years, I lived my life with the understanding that I was not the doer of it, just watching it all unfold. And it was a kind of tremendous freedom. And that freedom gave me the opportunity to think about things in a different way, to see the world from a very almost radical point of view, because I didn't feel I had that much skin in the game. Not that I didn't want my life to be beautiful. We all want that. Not that I was just ready to die on a moment's notice. Kind of was, but I'd rather live. I want the things I want, except I don't want much, because I realize that those wants are very automatic, and I'm not the doer of them. So it's not really my job to fulfill them. I could just let them go, let the next want arise and deal with that. And when I really do that, and this isn't a practice, it's just the way it works for me. I'm not recommending it or putting the negative on it. If I sit here wanting, suppose I have a yearning, if I just allow it to be there and notice it without trying to fulfill it, I notice that it's replaced by a new one. And if that one also is not pursued actively, after a while when I sit here, the things that I want start to dissipate. And it feels pretty good to just sit here. And I haven't gotten any of those things. And if it's a glass of water I want, or take a pee or something, of course I'm going to fulfill that. But my sex fantasies, my food cravings and all that, I feel more comfortable not fulfilling them and just sitting here, frankly. And then if nice food, I like to cook, so I might decide what to make for dinner and go out and get the ingredients and bring it home and cook it, and then we eat it, and that's beautiful. But if I don't do that, I could eat some crackers from the pantry, and that's just as good in a way, maybe even better. And if I have a sexual craving, I'm pretty sure that I will be having sex again, so I'll just kind of wait until that shows up, rather than I don't have to get out there and hunt, you know, it's not. And that's what I mean by awake. It's a really simple thing to just be with yourself, relax, because you know that sitting here in a relaxed state and being with your own self is probably better than almost anything you could cook up by pursuing it. That need to go out and get it, it's a survival skill. It's needed. But a lot of it was also put into us culturally, and we don't need to follow that. Maybe we do to make a living. You have to, you know, have the gumption to get up and go to work and do what the boss tells you. Okay, I get that. But apart from that, we've been taught that if you don't attain such and such, you're missing out. There's this spirituality, there's a tremendous fear of missing out involved. One has heard about, this goes to the question of, was I ever a seeker? This goes to so there's this fear. You've heard about enlightenment. So now if I don't do that, well, I'm just this ordinary asshole. I'm never, you know, and meanwhile, there's people getting enlightened. See, and that's not it. They're not getting enlightened. They're getting hypnotized. They're in a hypnotic trance of enlightenment. The teacher's actually in the trance, and the students are in the trance of being on the path that leads to the enlightenment. And they're all in the trance together, and it's a self-fulfilling group. In the chapter in Depending on No Things about the Muji retreat, that was the point that the writer made. This was a confession of someone who had gone to a Muji retreat because he hit the lottery and got a place in this retreat. That's how desperate this shit is. You enter your name in a lottery, and if you win, you get to go sit there and listen to this idiot. That's, I think I'll take second prize. But he went there, and he had this realization that this guy 20 years ago had been a street artist or something, and he got this idea, and now he's just really good at it, and he probably believes it, that he has this power and he is in a higher realm of understanding, but he has to keep doing it, and he needs all these students to keep him in that delusion, and that's what they have set up. It's a cult. It's simply a cult. And that's what the cult is about. The leader wants to have everyone bring coffee to him and everything, and pay his restaurant check or whatever it is, or buy him a $7 million house, which we heard that story about Francis Lucille.
Let's not talk about that because it was incorrect information.
Not talk about it?
Well, it was incorrect information, and I don't think it's good to...
Okay, well, okay. You could correct me if I fuck up. But I won't go there. Don't go. I've had a request from my audience not to. This is sacred ground. Don't fuck it up. Don't trot on it. What if I don't understand it and I say something stupid?
I'd rather do it privately. Is that okay?
This wasn't directed at you.
I understand.
Well, if you take it personally. You see, in this room, I don't consider people's feelings on that level. I will consider your feelings, but not to the extent that you tell me, let's talk about this personally. I'm just speaking to everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, so you might have to, either you could step out for this part of the presentation, or you could work on yourself. That's the choice. I like to work on myself. If something makes me feel uncomfortable, and things do, I'm just human, I'm not immune. If something makes me uncomfortable, I will try to chew that up and swallow it. Because if I can get it down once, it's not a problem anymore. So these little things are trivial. I mean, somebody's name and what Roberts, that's trivial. But there are things in life that aren't trivial, and we have to chew them up and swallow them. So I try to practice for that or rehearse for it. Yes? Okay. Forgive me, though.
Me too. I'm sorry I yelled at
Not at all. Not at all. We're just being honest here. I consider what you said perfectly okay. Fine. Totally great. Okay. So a cult is set up, and we won't use anyone's name. And it's a self-sustaining cult. See, if I have a belief, I don't. But if I have a belief and I want to speak about that belief, I need to have an audience that believes in it. But that's not what I have here, because that's not what I want. I don't want a cult. I don't want to be encouraged in delusion. I like it when people question what I'm saying. What do you mean by that, Robert? That doesn't quite jibe. I even like it that you said, you know, that's good too. Anything that might knock me off my spot, and that kind of did for a moment. See, I got a little bit emotional and everything, and had to observe that and chew that up and swallow it. See, that's what I'm talking about. Everything's permitted. Be here now. Everything is permitted. We might not like all of it. I know I don't.